I'd like to react to something that Kamala Harris recently said about space. Now, I want you to notice that Kamala Harris is not talking to 3-year-olds or first graders. She's actually talking, you can see in the background of this clip, a bunch of military guys and adults and people in the armed forces. And she is talking about the experience of space. Now, listening to Kamala Harris is, well, listening to her and listening to Biden are both very challenging in different ways. With Biden, you've just got the zoning in and out of consciousness, the staccato outbursts, the comical "come on, mans." But with Kamala Harris, you're kind of in a Northern California surreal zone, as you're about to discover. Listen.
Space is exciting. It spurs our imaginations, and it forces us to ask big questions. Space, it affects us all, and it connects us all.
I think these are statements that need, just like I'm doing with the Divine Comedy, a little bit of, I would call it a close reading. Now, let's start with, I think everyone here recognizes how extraordinary space is. And I'm thinking to myself, space is not extraordinary. Space is actually very ordinary. Why? Because it's everywhere. Everywhere you go, there's space. In fact, even if you leave this planet and you get out there, you go beyond the atmosphere, and what do you see? More space. It's outer space. So here's Kamala Harris sort of playing space cadet here. But notice that space is so ordinary that it literally never ends. I'm using a kind of Newtonian approach here, but if you think about it, if you go out in space and keep going, where does space end? You might come to a sort of a final point. You go, what about this? Well, what's beyond that? More space. So space is, if anything, not extraordinary. It's very ordinary. Next, Kamala Harris. Space is exciting. Why is space exciting? How is space exciting? First of all, is she talking about ordinary space? Let's just take the space between two dots. Looking at it, there's some space. Why is it exciting? Is she talking about scientific discovery? Here, I have a table right below me. I'm kind of tapping on it. You can probably hear me tapping on it. Now, we do learn in physics that most of matter, including matter that appears to us hard, is made up of empty space. Does Kamala Harris know this? Has she discovered that most of matter is actually made up of empty space? This is what's exciting about it? Or is she talking about outer space? But why is outer space exciting? Outer space is mostly empty. There's mostly nothing there. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said that he was terrified by the silence of the vast empty spaces. He's talking about what happens when you move beyond the planet Earth and you essentially have the nothingness of space. And Pascal is sort of experiencing this in a kind of philosophical sense. But this is not Kamala Harris. Exciting to her is just a word with no meaning. She's excited when she thinks about the idea of space. Let's see why she thinks it's exciting. It spurs our imaginations and it forces us to ask big questions. First of all, why does space force you to do anything? Where's the compulsion involved? If I'm walking somewhere, I look out there, I don't see anything. I don't feel forced to think about anything at all. What are these big questions? Kamala Harris doesn't say. What is she talking about? I remember going back down to the 1960s when the Russians put cosmonauts into space. They actually gave them a project. They said, I think this was Khrushchev, if I'm not mistaken. He's like, go look and let us know, you cosmonauts, if you can find God out there in outer space. Because if you can't find him, he's probably not there. So this is sort of logic Soviet style. But this would be at least a big question. It's kind of a stupid question when put that way. But is that the big question Kamala Harris is talking about? She maintains a kind of sphinx-like silence on the matter. And then finally, space. It affects us all, and it connects us all. Well, First of all, how does space affect us? How does it connect us all? Is she basically saying that if it wasn't for space, we would all be physically attached to each other? And so since we have space, it is space that connects us to each other. But if you think about it, isn't space what separates us from each other? If you're standing 100 yards away from me, what's between us is empty space. How is that space connecting us? It would appear to be separating us. That's why we use phrases like, get out of my space. In other words, back off, stay away from me, don't be connected to me so closely. So space here is clearly a gap, it's a break, it's a kind of hole in the fabric of reality. Now, I'm sort of taking this a little too far, but what you can get at is I'm trying to show the sheer meaninglessness, the sheer vacuity, the sheer intellectual null set that is otherwise known as Kamala Harris.